Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said since terror struck London yesterday. Much more will be said in the coming days. But the greatest response lies not in the words of politicians, but in the everyday actions of ordinary people. For beyond these walls today, in scenes repeated in towns and cities across the country, millions of people are going about their days and getting on with their lives. As I speak, millions will be boarding trains and aeroplanes to travel to London and to see for themselves the greatest city on earth. It is in these actions, millions of acts of normality, that we find the best response to terrorism.
Theresa May, speaking on the floor of Parliament today, after the horrific terror attack yesterday, that frankly these attacks have become all too common. 855-40-LAURA, we have new information about the healthcare vote, which is coming up tonight, and the commentary that followed this terror attack, once again, so much of it missing the real point. We now know that the assailant has both British and, according to NBC News, Israeli citizenship, and he was, according to Theresa May, under surveillance for some time by the MI15, and then MI15 determined that, in fact, he was a peripheral figure in the radical extremism, Islamic extremism that sadly has been infecting Britain for some time. So at first they said they had not surveilled him, that he wasn't under any kind of terror watch, but then as time went on, we learned more about exactly who this individual was. His name has not been released thus far, but the victims, their stories are now starting to come to the fore. French school children among those who were injured, and the stories of heroism and bravery are, of course, as usual, inspiring. But as we think about this horrific act, again, using a truck to kill and maim and terrorize, and then a knife, using a truck and a knife. They didn't have a gun, they didn't have a bomb, they had a truck. It was a lone wolf, we understand. It's a lone wolf. Well, does this mean that Britain, the best response is just to go about the business of, business, normalcy? Let's go back to normal. Well, this is exactly what these individuals were doing. This is exactly what the kids and exactly what the police and exactly what the parents and those going to work were doing. They were just going about their normal lives. So the response has to be more than go about your normal lives. Nigel Farage was phenomenal. He was on, I think it was Tucker last night. And on Tucker, he said the response here has to be control who comes into your country and be aware of the challenges of assimilation. Assimilation. What does that mean? You could be born in Britain and still not be fully assimilated if your neighborhood or your culture demands that you not be assimilating. The demand is that you don't assimilate. In fact, you're not really British. You're Islamic. You're a Muslim who happens to live in Britain. So you have a British passport, but you don't. That doesn't govern who you are. What governs who you are is the Holy Quran and some of the more twisted interpretations of it. Theresa May spoke about who this individual is, not naming him, but reminding us once again that all the money they spend on surveillance, all the cameras all over Britain, none of that is going to stop the type of terror that we're seeing today. The only thing that will stop the type of terror that we saw yesterday and we saw in Nice last year and we've seen all over the globe are countries that take immigration and assimilation seriously. The sentiment about going back to the business of business, that's a nice sentiment. And sure, you don't want the country to become paralyzed. Yes, to that extent, she's right. But it's not just that. And for the liberals to come out yesterday and immediately begin worrying about Islamophobia in Britain. I started to see those comments yesterday. I said, this is like clockwork. The first thing you hear about is Islamophobia. What you should be hearing about are the lives of the victims and the resolve, the doubled resolve of those who are supposed to be working to keep the innocent and those who want to be free safe, the citizens of Britain safe. The open borders immigration, the lax approach to immigration, the hunger for multiculturalism. Multiculturalism has been a catastrophic failure across Europe, in the United States, on the college campuses. Doesn't mean that you don't have people from different backgrounds, and we wouldn't welcome people from different backgrounds. No. That's fine to have people from different backgrounds in your country, but they have to buy into what it means to be British. They have to buy into what it means to be American. The Holy Quran does not supersede the Constitution. If the Holy Quran collides with the Constitution, then we got a problem here. And just to write this off, it's another disaffected youth. It's another lone wolf who wasn't welcomed fully into British society. You know you're going to hear those stories. 855-40-LAURA. We have a lot to get to on this issue and much more. Waleed Ferris is going to stop by. We're going to talk to Byron York coming up. The latest on Devin Nunes versus Adam Schiff. I call him Schiff T. Adam Schiff on the bombshell that Nunes dropped yesterday on how President Trump's team was, in fact, at least incidentally surveilled during the transition. And we'll learn more about that as the days go on. Dr. Meg Meeker is going to also stop by. Now that we have the planning that's already underway for junior and senior proms, can you believe they're already planning that? Well, now we have done away with kings and queens of proms because that's too gender stereotypical, apparently. That's too narrow to have a king and a queen. So we're getting rid of gender conforming sensibility and what that means for life in high school, junior high school, and elementary school for children and students all across this country, and who's behind it. We're going to get into that with her. And an interesting trio of individuals hit the road in Chicago to actually try to figure out what has happened to families, individuals, communities that have been plagued by gang violence, with fatherlessness and hopelessness, and how three people from three different backgrounds are trying to make a difference in their own way. We're going to talk about that. A lot more to get to. 855-40-LAURA. What lessons can be gleaned from what we saw yesterday in Britain? A native-born British citizen committing this horrific act of terror. It's already having a ripple effect in France. Of course, the French elections coming up. Marine Le Pen, she spoke out today about the need to control what happens in immigration in France and the need to be super vigilant about the lack of assimilation of certain people coming from other parts of the world. So she's already addressing this today. We'll bring you the latest on that and a lot more coming up.
Today we meet as normal, as generations have done before us and as future generations will continue to do, to deliver a simple message. We are not afraid.
With the stock market hitting new highs, you're wondering, when is the bottom going to fall out? Well, don't wait for it to happen. Protect the savings you've earned. Safeguard your future with physical gold and silver. It's Laura Ingraham for the company I trust, the authority on precious metals, Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold sells physical precious metal for your possession and will ship it right to your front door. And thanks to a little-known IRS tax law, you can even move your IRA or eligible 401k into an IRA backed by physical gold and silver. Diversification insulates you from the rapid inflation or Wall Street fails. Birch Gold Group has a long-standing track record of success with thousands of satisfied clients and an A-plus rating for the Better Business Bureau. So contact Birch Gold Group for a free information kit on physical precious metals. A 16-page guide will reveal how gold and silver can protect your savings and how to legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA. To get your free no-obligation kit, go to birchgold.com/Laura. That's BIRCH gold.com/Laura.
I really believe that some very searching questions are now being asked. I think the population of this country, and indeed most of the other European states, we're now saying to our governments, look, frankly, you have brought this upon us through immigration policies and through not cracking down on extremism that has grown in communities. What are you going to do for us?
You're listening to The Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Let me just say that Nigel Farage is once again one of the smartest people on television. In speaking about what happened yesterday, we find that there are so many who are just in the business of explaining away this act of terror as something that's just normal. This is just something that happens and we just have to get used to it. The London mayor, Sadiq Khan, he said this yesterday.
Today we meet...
No, that's not the London mayor. The London mayor, Sadiq Khan, said this yesterday. Let's listen.
Well, London is the safest global city in the world and one of the safest cities in the world. My thoughts are with the family of Keith Palmer, the police officer who tragically lost his life yesterday, keeping our city and keeping Londoners safe.
Well, London is a safe... What he said, which was the most outrageous, what he said was that this is part of normal life in a big city. This is just what life in the big city is like. Joining us now, Waleed Faris, of course, expert on Middle East politics, terror. He was terrific last night on Fox. Waleed, this has become all too common, that we have an act of terror, we have a candlelight vigil, we have people saying, well, we're just going to go back to normal, we're not going to let the terrorists win, but yet the fundamental question of radicalization, the fundamental question of borders and immigration and assimilation just get kicked down the road for another day and another discussion.
Yes, Laura. Unfortunately, you have a segment of the commentators, they be politicians or opinion makers, who resist the debate about it, who resist the dialogue about it, and therefore, in the case that you just mentioned, who actually do not want to admit that we are under attack in the West in general. It does not mean that cities are going down. It does not mean that the governments are going down. But for 1 hour, the parliament, was paralyzed. For 1 or more hours, 10 Downing Streets were paralyzed. Had there been victims in other parts of the city, yes, maybe this would have been normal in big cities. But every TV station in the world was focusing on that event simply because, as the Prime Minister has said, this has an inspiration, an ideological, a jihadi inspiration. It was admitted by the British authorities. Second, they said, well, it is individual, possible. The next day, 6 arrests are made. So there are more than one question about this issue.
Well, we have an individual who at first they said was not under surveillance. They found out then that he had been under surveillance, but they had determined that he was a peripheral figure in the extremist movement. So for whatever reason, he did not get picked up on internet chat rooms, not at least for what we know so far. He was not in being surveilled in any recent time frame, but had been in the past. But again, this was just it just keeps happening. But nobody wants to talk about the real issue. The real issue is Islamic extremism. The real issue is individuals who are either coming in new waves of immigration, then they might be fine, but then the kids they have end up getting radicalized on the internet or in their Islamic schools. And then what do? They're British citizens, and they can move about the city freely, and in this case, just get an SUV and kill a bunch of people.
Absolutely, Laura. The mother problem is the fact that authorities or intelligentsia, which influences the authorities, refuses the notion that there is a mothership called the ideology, the radical Islamist ideology or jihadi ideology. Therefore, if they make a mistake in analytical perception, they're going to make a mistake everywhere else. Take this specific case. He was not part of the dangerous body of the jihadists that authorities are monitoring. Fine. But the problem is any part of that body, once activated, once radicalized, will become as important as others. Many of those jihadists who've attacked both in Europe and in America were not part of that surveillance, because the surveillance is not about the ideology. It's not about radicalization. It's about, have they traveled to Syria, yes or no, but there is something deeper in the West, and I argued this yesterday on TV. Even if we defeat ISIS in Mosul and in Raqqa, there is another battleground, which is the West, and that battleground is radicalization and everything that comes with it. Where do they come from? Who are radicalizing? And all these issues. And this is something, unfortunately, part of the intelligentsia is refusing to admit.
Well, the hunger for multicultural societies. We need to be multicultural. We must be multicultural. And it's almost like there's a segment of the society with a lot of power that if people have to die in order for them to be multicultural, then people are just going to have to die. A bunch of innocent people are just going to have to die, apparently regularly, because this is just a part of life in the big city, according to the mayor of London. Everyone's criticizing Donald Trump, Don Jr., for saying that in a tweet, but I will say it's shocking to have a mayor of a major city say, well, this is part of life in a big city. Well, what? It doesn't have to be part of life in the big city. Of course there's always going to be crime. But of this type of twisted nature? I don't think so.
You know, the confusion they have, Laura, is that they think that jihadism is part of life. Once they embed this, then they think it's going to be dissolved with time. They don't realize that jihadism should not be part of pluralism. If they're saying, oh, you could have socialist and liberal and all kind of... Yeah, we admit that, of course. But jihadism is not part of it. Jihadism is equal to Nazism and Bolshevism. This is something that, especially in Britain, they should be sensitive, and they are sensitive to. Many British voices have been raised against that. But unfortunately, as I said, in the intelligentsia, they're still confused about what they're dealing with. They think that Islamism, the Salafists or the Khomeinis or the jihadists, are just part of life, and then these incidents are just marginal incidents. And I think there is a debate about it that has not taken place yet.
Well, and we remember from the study from last year, it was April of 2016, the journals wrote about it, this survey by ICM, which is a research firm in Britain, using face-to-face interviews. This was featured in Britain's Channel 4 documentary. Times of London published some of the findings. But 800 British Muslims left the country to wage jihad with the Islamic State. Another 600 were caught trying to join the group. And then I think it ended up being a third of Muslims think Jews have too much power in Britain, compared with 9% of the general population. 7% of the respondents supported the establishment of an Islamic State. If 7% of your population wants an Islamic State in Britain, you got a big problem. Dr. Waleed Phares, thank you so much for your commentary. We have a lot more to get to on the Laura Ingraham Show. 855-40-LAURA. Devin Nunes brings big news to the White House. Stay with us.
The Freedom Caucus, through Mark Meadows, Congressman from North Carolina, said that the votes aren't there, that this bill won't pass. But what say you?
Well, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. There's a claim that there's 24 votes against it. We're getting a lot of Freedom Caucus members to support this bill. We've been adding Freedom Caucus votes to this bill all week.
And that was Paul Ryan yesterday. The big vote, hours away. And do or die for Trump, the GOP, on this health care reform issue. We're going to talk about this now with one of the Freedom Caucus members and my friend Dave Brat, 7th District in Virginia, who has been a solid no, at least so far, on this Paul Ryan bill. People calling it Ryan Care. Trump says don't call it Trump Care. Congressman Brat, great to talk to you. How you doing?
Hey, Laura, great to be on.
So what's the latest? I mean, we're hearing all sorts of conflicting information about this so-called repeal bill. And where are you, and where is the Freedom Caucus?
Well, Mark Meadows is doing a phenomenal job, first of all. So he's been on the line with President Trump half the day yesterday, and I'm not exaggerating. And so it comes down. We have 35 members. There's probably 10 other conservative members and 10 to 15 moderates who are still in play. So the politics of this matters, right? When you have 40, we're not going to write the bill. And the problem with the bill is, I talked to my Democrat colleagues yesterday in our meeting, and they acknowledge we have kept the architecture and structure of Obamacare in our bill, right? So that's the starting point. So then the question is, how much progress can you make within that structure? And everybody knows we ran on a full repeal. So we're trying to do the best we can. We're still a no because we haven't made enough progress. If we can get bucket 2, the insurance regulations, into the bill, or a substantial part of them where the price of insurance actually goes down for the folks out there, that would be a huge lift. And Trump is showing some signs that that may be possible. He is a negotiator. He pays attention to product, and that's been our thesis, right? And Karl Rove gave me a hard time last night on the news. He says, well, it's stupid to think you can ask for something big. You got to ask for small stuff, and you should be happy with that, right? Don't ask how.
Oh, Karl Rove's giving you advice, Congressman
yeah.
Karl Rove?
Oh, yeah. So right. And so, I mean, it's just amazing, right? So we're not doing this for ourselves. We're the only group, right? We don't get all the special interest money. We're doing this for the American people. And so we have to weigh the politics of, if you started from scratch, what are you realistically going to get, right, when you don't have enough free market forces up here in Washington, D.C., versus what can we get done by a compromise here where Trump wants to get it right. And we're going to bat for him because we don't want him to be left in a death spiral in 2 or 3 years when prices go up. CBO's got prices going up for 15 to 20% until 2020. And if people haven't noticed, there's elections before then, right? And so this isn't a small ball. And so we're swinging for the fences. And if we can get the insurance regulations, it's just the easiest way to think, this sounds complex, but the insurance regulations, right? If you look back at the banking crisis, what caused that? We regulated the banks so bad, we told them just give a mortgage out to anybody. And we had a financial crisis over that. We're doing the same thing with healthcare. The whole thing is regulated. We're just making stuff up. You got to provide this. There's no limits on costs. Everything's free. That you know in your gut that's going to collapse. And so we're doing our best to.
Well, what I'm not following, Congressman, what I'm not following here is Paul Ryan made a big deal about how you can't do any of this stuff because it's reconciliation. How does tinkering around with some of the regulatory moves by the Secretary of HHS, how does any of that change the underlying problem of collusion and anti-competitive behavior that will continue among healthcare companies, insurance companies? To some extent, they get some protection from antitrust prosecution investigation. How will any of what you're talking about affect that? I mean, I'm not seeing it. And how is that part of reconciliation anyway?
You got it right. They've been tossing this word around, reconciliation, which makes it impossible for us to do anything until the last day. Then all of a sudden, there's this new creativity, and hey, maybe we can do some of this stuff, right? And we got the Senate even saying we can put some of this stuff in the bill. And all of that is made possible because of one person, and that's President Trump. He's the new guy in the room that's cutting through all the baloney and trying to negotiate a deal that makes some sense. And so that's the new piece. So reconciliation, Ted Cruz is the highest, caliber legal mind in the country from Harvard and Supreme Court timber and all that. And he says there's no issue with a parliamentarian, right? Because Vice President Pence can go in the chair and we can get through what we need to get through. But what we're really finding out is what you were saying. This reconciliation has been used as a roadblock to protect special interests. And at the end of the day, Trump's a deal maker, and so he's not about special interests. He's about getting it right for the American people. And the House Freedom Caucus is trying to get at a real solution that will be better than this bill as it was originally given to us. Had some pretty bad outcomes.
This was a back and forth yesterday. Sean Spicer, White House press secretary, on where we are now.
I want to get a sense of how confident you are. I don't know if you want to rate it in percentage on it. Like, how confident are you that the bill will pass? And if it doesn't pass, is there a plan B?
No, there is no plan. I mean, there's plan A and plan A. We're going to get this done.
There's plan A and plan A. So, in other words, unless this thing passes, they wouldn't go for a full clean repeal and some of the pro-competition measures in a follow-on bill.
Right, and so that's where we are, right? So we have to negotiate with that stance right there coming out of the White House. And there should be a plan B. Part of the problem is there was never a plan B. We never had a debate on competing bills. It was always this one, and it was a set of bullet points, and then it was fleshed out in a bill. And boy, that bill does not look like the bullet points. And so now we're left with this gigantic federal structure where if you pull out one piece, it affects 5 other pieces. Well, there's a shocker. I mean, that's what happens when you do federal regulation. So the whole thing is one of those old games we used to play when you were a kid. You pull out the one stick and the whole thing falls down. That's why we need to get back to markets, because markets solve that instantaneously. That's what the market system does, is it responds to complexity. So now we have an utterly complex system again, and we're trying to resolve the major pieces to bring down costs. That's the cost of premiums, right? Everybody can get coverage right now, right? The Medicaid at the lower end, but they can't use it because there's huge deductibles. Not in Medicaid, but in the bronze and silver and those plans. And so no one can get health care. And so what's missing in Obamacare, the reason it's in the ditch and in the death spiral, is because they didn't pay any attention to price. And so we're doing our best for the American people to get that right, but there's only so much 40 of us can do, right? We don't have power to write the bill.
Well,
so
how much pressure? I mean, how much pressure is being brought to bear on you? I think the conversations about process tend to be really brittle and uninteresting to people. But how much pressure is being brought to bear on you and the Freedom Caucus to deliver a victory for the new Trump administration, a victory? Because they said yesterday, look, you guys don't do this, we're not doing tax reform, and it's not going to happen this year. All these other things that you all want, not going to happen unless you get this. You come on board with a little bit of negotiation.
Right, and so it's overwhelming, right? So I'm getting phone calls from higher ups that I respect.
Overwhelming pressure, Dave?
Everybody is. Yeah, pressure like crazy, right? There's all sorts with what you just said. And so, but it's very interesting, right? We didn't have the same cooperation 3 months ago when you're trying to carve this together, and we said this won't work, right? We made it very clear this doesn't work, and we don't want Trump to be caught in a death spiral, right? And so our requests, we've had them written up. Mark Meadows has done a tremendous job of putting out what we need to happen, and he knows the insurance numbers. But yeah, the political pressure is just overwhelming. And then everybody's being told this is a repeal and replace. And that's it's not a repeal. We didn't repeal.
It does nothing to stop the price. It does nothing to stop the price increase. The experts I really trust on this, Ramin Oskwi, others.
Yep.
Does nothing to stop the price increases. Prices are going to keep going up, and Republicans are going to pay in 2018 and 2020, he said, because people are not going to see the relief that they think with all this glossy push for a repeal and this, all this triumphant conversation about how we're reforming health care. Turns out they're like, well, wait a second, my costs keep going up. Who do you think they're going to blame? Chuck Schumer? I don't think so.
That's the tension we're facing, right? Do we just take the easy way out, do some easy compromise? We want Trump to have a victory. It is hugely important. It will affect the agenda a little bit, but we can come back in a few weeks and get this right? I mean, the deal is sitting there within striking range where we can bring prices down. But you're right, all the experts, right, on the right and the left, both acknowledge, it was on the front page of National Journal last week, the architecture of Obamacare is still in place.
Remains.
And if you don't get rid of that, you shouldn't expect a different outcome. And then you're right. In 2 years, we have elections. The president will have an election after 3 years when prices still are not going down. And how do you think that's going to? Then everybody's going to go back and look and say, where was the House Freedom Caucus? Why didn't they stop this thing? And so we get pressure no matter which way we go, right? And so I'm not whining, but we're in a tough spot right here.
Congressman Brat, I have to ask you a question about something unrelated to health care. This horrific attack in Rockville, Maryland, I know you've seen the reports. Turns out now, not surprising, the teenagers who were accused of raping this ninth grader, taking turns raping her, she's 14 years old, both of them were apprehended at the border, both of them illegal immigrants, both of them released to a sponsor. One of them was looking for his uncle, but it's been settled through various government agencies, settled in Rockville, Maryland. One of them 18 years old, and never, no idea of expedited removal. Doesn't happen in these cases. What does this tell us about where we are in the fact that our American lives are endangered by this reckless border release policy?
Well, it's the same kind of thing, right? So on the same as the healthcare logic, right? You can either act like you're just in utopian land and act like you're being compassionate to everybody and everyone's a great human being and they're welcome in this country, and boy, that's a nice narrative, until you get an absolute tragedy like this, right? So I saw Nigel Farage last night on the news out in Britain, same thing yesterday in England, and then all across Europe. If you want to see what's coming our way when you don't have the right policy, right? So this should tell the American people why policy will affect your life of your daughter and son. Good policy will affect your life. And America has just been taking the easy way out on everything for 30 years. We've avoided free markets. We've avoided the rule of law. We've avoided the Judeo-Christian tradition. We've avoided all the foundational pillars that made this country great. And we've been on a sugar high, and now all the evidence is piling in. Our economy's not growing. The rule of law is crashing. You're getting terrible incidents like this. Kids don't even know what values they believe in.
No, there's no respect.
Human rights are
there's
anymore.
No respect. Respect is out the window.
There's no discipline. Right. And it's a huge cultural slide. And people like you have been leading that charge for decades. And so thank God for you, but we need an army of you out there to get this country back on the right track.
Well, we have to get back to the basics, common sense, pragmatism, American patriotism, and good Americans who stand up for American values. We're not El Salvador. We're not Guatemala. We're not Mexico. This is the United States of America. And if we don't have people who throw off the cloak of multiculturalism and start embracing independence, liberty, and American ideals, and we're going to be in a lot more trouble than we're already in right now. But Dave Brat, keep fighting the good fight for a common sense approach to health care and finance and all of these issues. We're going to be following this very closely. Congressman Dave Brat, thank you so much. We'll close out this hour on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Who was more right than Donald Trump when he announced his run for the presidency and he talked about the crime coming across the border? Remember the grief and the criticism that he took. Remember what they said about him for talking about rapes and so forth. Well, who was more right? Donald Trump or the American media? Don't go away.
When I grow up to be a man.
It's so easy to beat up millennials. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. You know, the millennial generation, snowflake generation, everybody living with mommy and daddy. They're on their health care plan till they're 26. Even the Republicans want to continue the infantilization of adult life in the United States. So we're not really an adult, according to this new research by CBS. The youngest millennials are actually, okay, just to know who they are, they should be graduating college this year, but that doesn't mean they consider themselves adults. Now, what does this mean? The median age of millennials is about 30, okay? But most of them believe that they only identify as adults when they hit around 30, okay? So when they've moved out of their parents' home, they have a job, and they pay their own bills, but it's at about 30. Oh, my gosh. Men and women at age 17 and 18 are fighting in our military and keeping us safe. And most of these millennials, it's until 30 that they're adults? We're in bigger trouble than I thought.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting.
Rule out the possibility that senior Obama administration officials were involved in this?
No, we cannot.
We should possibly start looking at a special investigator who can provide the kind of objectivity that will be necessary. And we can remember that Chairman Nunes, who I work with, I've traveled with, he was on the transition team, and one wonders how cozy he has become to the administration. For him to go directly to the White House without consulting the ranking member is quite disappointing.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Devin Nunes goes over to the White House yesterday to reveal that he has discovered, and we'll learn more about this, that in fact the Trump campaign was surveilled by members of the Obama administration, that they had been under surveillance by the Obama administration, that individual names had been unmasked by the intelligence community, and that those names had been leaked to the media. Nunes's information, which he said he would deliver, in more detail in the coming days, he revealed on the White House lawn. And he said that, look, there's no direct wiretap by President Obama of the Trump administration, Trump Tower, I should say. There was indeed surveillance. And, perhaps it was collected incidentally. And even Trump himself could have been surveilled. In other words, even the president's personal communications could have been swept up in this surveillance. 855-40-LAURA. This is just a kind of a fun thing to speculate about. But how many of you, if you had to put money on it, if you were betting people, how many of you would bet that Barack Obama himself read a transcript of communications by the Trump transition team, or even perhaps by then-elect Trump himself? How many of you think Barack Obama read a transcript, partial or full transcript, of some communications that were swept up? Perhaps they were just incidental collections of communications. But if you had to bet on this, or if you don't want to say Obama himself, you could say a top aide to President Obama. Let's say a Valerie Jarrett. Let's say a Ben Rhodes. Read transcripts of conversations that were had at Trump Tower or by members of the transition team as part of this ongoing investigation. Devin Nunes address this issue. We're going to the third soundbite, boys. Address this issue of whether Obama himself ordered the wiretap.
So that never happened.
That President Obama orders any kind of surveillance of the president, of the president-elect?
We don't know who sent the taskings. If the taskings were changed into what went into these intelligence reports, but we're going to try to find that out.
And the amazing thing about all of this is that the media, their response all yesterday was what a horrible, awful, rotten person Devin Nunes is, to actually go to the White House and inform the president of what they so far have learned. And you heard that Andre Carson criticizing Devin Nunes. He wasn't the only one criticizing Nunes. We had Brian Williams. Again, Brian Williams, who himself has tattered credibility after his made-up stories about being shot in a military aircraft while reporting years ago. Brian Williams on MSNBC referenced Nunes' involvement in all of this.
Let's speak English here. He could not have injected more suspicion into his remarks. He wanted to be on television because if not, there's ways of getting you into and out of the White House.
He just wants to be on TV, apparently. That's the only thing Devin Nunes wants. And then Jake Tapper interviews Nunes. Again, the focus isn't on what was in this communication, how do we know it was incidental, and what questions does this raise about what the president knew and when he knew it. This is Tapper.
What would you say to Democrats out there on Capitol Hill who say it looks like maybe you're trying to give President Trump and the White House cover for this falsehood that he told a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, well, look, I said the day after or 2 days later to all of you that I was quite confident that President Obama did not order a wiretap on Trump Tower. I have been very clear with the press on this, and I was provided several intelligence documents that clearly show that President Trump and the transition team were included in these reports.
Think about the different way that the press covers Adam Schiff yesterday. He comes out to the microphone and he is indignant that the Democrats weren't first briefed on all the details of what Nunes learned and that the White House was given any information on this. He received like the king's treatment on every media program he went on. Very little follow-up on the substance of what Nunes said, which is very different from what we've heard in the past. In fact, communications had been intercepted after the election of Trump officials by the outgoing Obama administration. Incidental, non-incidental, we'll learn more about that later. That's a bombshell story. And they want to focus on Nunes? By the way, Katty Kay was among the Nunes critics. Let's listen.
One thing about this incident is that it does reveal how damaging this credibility gap that the president has caused in the White House over the last 2 months has become for him. The fact that we are all thinking that this must be for political reasons, that this was to give the president some kind of face-saving off-ramp, is an indication of how we are now thinking about this White House.
Whoa. Devin Nunes yesterday said that though much of this had been suspected on the basis of these media reports in the New York Times and the Washington Post, there was a new thing that he had discovered, that the surveillance did not involve the ongoing FBI investigation into Russia's alleged involvement in 2016. Indeed, he said that none of the surveillance had any intelligence value. So what they picked up from the Trump folks wasn't related to the Russia investigation, he said. And Katty Kay's focusing on Donald Trump's credibility? How does this look good for the Obama administration? Most of the activity, Breitbart writes, occurred during the transition period from November to January. Furthermore, Nunes said that he did not know whether the phone calls, including those phone calls involving Trump, certain phone calls were among the communications captured. He added that the new information had come to light after the FBI's hearing, testimony, of James Comey, when the congressman appealed to anyone with new information to come forward. He said that the new revelations had been brought to him legally by sources who thought that he should know it. And this vindicates earlier reporting, by the way, in LifeZet, Breitbart, Mark Levin, and others, and President Trump himself, when he said that Trump Tower And the Trump Tower is only relevant in the transition, right? That it would have been surveilled. But the media focus on Nunes is just, this is why people don't trust this media. They farther than they can throw them, they do not trust them. And by the way, Joe Scarborough has basically become the male Rachel Maddow of the morning. Let's listen.
Everything that Nunes said still says, bottom line, Donald Trump lied about Barack Obama when he said that he tapped his phones in Trump Tower. He lied about that. He's never come off of that. Nunes and everybody else around him is suggesting that the president has come off of that claim. He hasn't.
Whoa. I'm not even following that. Scarborough is still on the parsing of the words that, and again, I've already criticized that Obama himself ordered the wiretap of Trump Tower. No, but we now have really important information that indicates that the outgoing administration was surveilling, at least with incidental collection, Trump associates who are working for the transition. Don't you think that's the story here? 855-40-LAURA. How many of you think that Barack Obama himself or top officials, folks like Valerie Jarrett, maybe Ben Rhodes, read transcripts of what was said by some transition officials and ultimately somehow those got leaked to the press? How many of you think that? Let's go to Jim in Illinois, line 5. We'll take a lot of calls on this. Also, Byron York's going to be joining us, Meg Meeker. We have a great show on tap, the latest on the health care bill. Jim, go ahead.
Barack Obama knew everything about all the spying on Trump. Barack Obama spied on friends and foes alike across the waters, Germany, France. He spied on Americans every day. I'll tell you what, this is just a fake news, the fake media trying to put more spin and turn everything around their way. Most Americans believe and know that Barack Obama was dirty, is dirty, and used the telephones and the high tech to not just listen in to Trump and his people. They were listening into you and me when we had private conversations. Don't you doubt it.
Oh, yeah, they're collecting information on everyone. I don't trust these people. Joe Scarborough, again, I don't mean to just torture you with Joe Scarborough, but let's listen.
This is yet another embarrassment for our party, the Republican Party. You now have people on TV. I heard somebody last night saying, oh, none of the Republicans are stepping up. That's not true. John McCain is stepping up, calling for an independent counsel. Lindsey Graham has been calling for an independent counsel. There are good Republicans that are actually standing up and saying, we want to get to the bottom of this. But what happened yesterday in the House of Representatives with Nunes? I mean, it's an embarrassment for the entire party.
You know what's embarrassing is when we have so-called informed journalists and commentators who don't find it very curious that information is leaked to the press, selective information, by either Intel people or Obama people to hurt the incoming administration, information leaked as a felony. Instead, it's the palace intrigue of whether Devin Nunes or the process, well, he should have gone to the White House or gone to the Democrats first. Oh, you need an independent counsel. Well, I don't know. Devin Nunes seems to be getting some key information. He asked for information at the hearing. Anyone with information about how these names were unmasked, please bring it forward. Presto. The next day, 2 days later, he gets some information. Sounds like he's doing a pretty good job to me. Let's go to Gary, Kentucky. Gary, welcome.
Thank you. I think Obama looked at the transcripts on Trump or Trump people. He did not lie about Trump, but Obama probably lied, asked for surveillance. Obama is a liar and a bad guy. Thank God Nunes went to Trump before the Dems did.
Well, you know why? Sadly, he doesn't trust Adam Schiff to be an impartial arbiter of this information. I mean, this is key and critical information. The Democrats have an astonishing lack of curiosity about how this information was leaked and who's behind it. Was this political retribution or an attempt to set up a fail early on in the Trump administration, or put a cloud over the Trump administration early on to then, move to impeachment, whatever they want to cook up in their brains, some fantasy of impeachment? That could have begun in the West Wing under President Obama. That's a blockbuster story. But there's, again, an astonishing and aggressive lack of curiosity. Gee, I wonder why. 855-40-LAURA. We'll take your calls on this. What did Obama know, and when did he know it? Don't go away.
That I get a kick out of you.
What I saw has everything to do with possible surveillance activities, and the president needs to know that these intelligence reports are out there, and I have a duty to tell him that.
I do think that probably more so than any other single act during the course of this investigation, today's events underscore the need for a truly independent commission.
Yes, I'm doing fine.
I know that if this country enforced the laws that are already on the books, those two young men would not have been here, and this rape, this horrendous rape, would not have occurred.
I'm really outraged by the situation in Montgomery County. I'm a lifelong resident.
They're just, come in. You're 20 years old, come on in. Go to high school with a 14-year-old.
That's an absolute outrage. My blood is boiling about what's happened across this country because this previous administration, and frankly the Bush administration, refuse to do what needs to be done. You're here illegally, you come across the border, you have to be immediately turned back across the border. Not sending people to their relatives or their sponsors. Of course, we're talking about that horrific Rockville high school rape case. Listen to this. This is the title of the piece in the Washington Post today. Suspects in Rockville High rape case came to the U.S. last year to join relatives. They don't say illegal aliens. They don't say illegal immigrants. It's just, came to join relatives. Well, they came to do a few other things, didn't they? And by the way, this gives me a good time and good reminder to remind all of you. I want you to go to immigrationpause.org. Do it now. This story should remind us all that we need great allies in the fight for common sense border enforcement, vetting of people who come into this country, and support what Donald Trump wants to do to re-inject law and order into American society. Ask 10 of your friends to do the same. Again, immigrationpause.org. I want you to do that today. By the way, we learned more. Both of them, of course, are illegal immigrants. And Jose Montano was searching for his uncle. Henry Sanchez Milian was searching for his dad. These are the two rapists who have destroyed this young girl's life. Traveling separately, each was apprehended by federal border agents and targeted for deportation proceedings, but released pending their hearings. Unbelievable. Donald Trump was right when he announced his run for the presidency. Coming up, Byron York, the latest on Nunez and health care reform. Stay with us.
Here's an interesting fact for you. There are nearly 1 million new books published in the U.S. alone every year. So if you like to read, how do you choose what you're going to read? Well, that's where Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews comes in. You see, Kirkus has been one of the top book review publications for over 80 years. They do a deep dive on thousands of titles every year, including interviewing best-selling authors and telling you what might be the hot new release before everyone else knows. And it's coming to Podcast One in just a few weeks. So keep your eyes and ears open for Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews.
All right, David on line 5, millennials and their work ethic. I hate to paint with such a broad brush with millennials, but I guess I've found that in some cases it does seem they're a little less hungry than I was. Let's just put it that way, a little less hungry, a little more concerned with their free time or their personal schedules than they are with work. And maybe it's part of the everybody gets a trophy generation. Well, like, I'm special and I need my personal time and I've had this previous engagement and I just can't make it tomorrow. I'm sorry, I can't make it. David, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for taking my call. I've been a big fan for a while.
Thanks.
Read all your books. Thank you.
Thank you.
My daughter is 20 years old. and she has to be just the most unmotivated, laziest person I know. Her main 3 priorities in life are getting a new tattoo, going to the latest movie, and going to the concert. And that is all she is worried about. She has no career path. She's the girl who went to a job interview in a pair of flip-flops, a torn T-shirt, and sweatpants, and then when they turned her down, was totally oblivious to the fact that you look like a homeless bum, why didn't I get the job? She just didn't understand that fact. And I was always brought up, 15 minutes early, you walk in, suit and tie, you put your best foot forward,
Absolutely.
You bust your butt, you work for what you want, growing up in the Midwest and here in Iowa. And my daughter is just, me, and if she don't get her way, she'll have a freaking temper tantrum.
Well, can I ask a few questions about her upbringing? Because Columbo here has a few, my little antenna are going up here. So how did you model behavior for her? Your own work ethic, your own approach to life? You and your wife, I assume. Are you and your wife together?
Yep, my wife and I have been married 20 years yesterday.
Okay, so she's 20. You had her right away when you got married, is that right? I'm not trying to get too personal here, but...
Yeah, my wife was pregnant with her when we got married.
Right, so what? Great. So you got married and good stuff. So when did your wife work, or did she did she do the hard work of raising children?
She stayed home and raised the kids until they all got to like 5, 6 years old, and then she got a job and joined the workforce, and she had been kind of working intermittently in between our kids.
And how many children do you have? How many children?
We have 4 kids. My daughter and then 3 boys, and my 3 sons are very hard workers. Want to go to college, fight for what they want, save their money.
Okay, so she's an outlier. She sounds like an outlier in the family. You know what you should do? You should have her call into the show at some point. I'm going to help her. No, I'll help her. I will help her. Look, she just needs to get a better focus. She needs to get on the right track. And the society is filled with all sorts of little, enticements and shiny objects that young people will follow. And then all of a sudden they'll wake up and they'll be 35 and they'll still be wearing the same pair of flip-flops they were wearing when they were 21. And they'll think, gee, why does it seem like life has passed me by? So get her to call into the show sometime and tell our call screener that you're Dave from Iowa. And she can think this is really goofy, but guess what? I think I can help. I just have a feeling that I can help. Is she doing any work whatsoever now, or is she in school now?
She has a job that she has expressed her desire that she is going to be quitting that job because she wants to be a professional video game player. I don't even know what the heck that means.
Did you allow your kids to play video games at home?
When they were younger, we did, but it was, your homework's done, your chores are done. This is the last hour before your bedtime. So yeah, you can play a video game with Dad, and we'll have a little, competition with the game, or you can play with Mom. It was, never a console in their room, and their hours and hours.
Well, I can't figure this out without talking to her, but I want to talk to her. I want to see what's going on in her head and who her friends are and what her faith life is, and see if we can't make some progress there. So try to get her to call into the show. I mean, I know you think she might not, but she might. You just never know. Well, and plus, if nothing else, she can just have a fun conversation, and then she could just laugh at me thinking I don't know what I'm talking about, which is fun. It's not the first time I've heard that. Let's go to TJ in Utah, line 1. TJ, we're talking about millennials. They're about aged 18 to 25, 26 or so. That's what they peg the millennial generation as. And this is this is the generation that grew up most, I think best described as the everybody gets a trophy generation, right? Where there is no winner or loser. There are no class rankings anymore, and everyone's special. And it's the PC culture. I mean, politically correct culture in schools and in colleges. And now what?
Well,
now
she's
what?
A millennial.
What? Drew's a millennial, but he's really hardworking. So I don't think you can paint it with a broad brush. I think they just need to be taught. I mean, a lot of them just aren't taught. They don't have parents who really actually teach them why it's so important to have a work ethic and to show up at work with a can-do attitude. You know what the worst thing you could tell someone who's your superior in the workplace? No, I don't think I can do that. You know what you say? I'm going to try my best to get that done. Or, okay, there might be some. Let me do my best. Let me see what I can do to get that done. Or, absolutely. In fact, I already have it done. Outperform in the workplace. That's what I tried to do. You outperform. So you go above and beyond, and then suddenly you become indispensable in the workplace. You become the indispensable one. Next thing you know, you're promoted. You're off to the next thing. TJ in Utah, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, big fan, and I am a millennial, but I'm on the older edge of it. And I think it actually goes all the way up to mid-30s now, 34 maybe.
Does it? Okay, go ahead.
But I don't think it should. I think that there is a demarcation between the millennials that grew up in that trophy culture, but then we went to college, most of us, and then graduated into the Great Recession, and that taught us that all of this gilded, wonderful life we thought we would have is no longer around. You know, it's a new normal. And so I find that the older millennials tend to work really hard. They tend to be very motivated and great workers, and then the younger generation that's coming out of college now still has that same gilded mentality, but they haven't had to go through that harder period. So
I think the 9/11, TJ, don't you think 9/11 also, you were, 14 or so when 9/11 happened? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
9/11 also is different. It's a different demarcation for older millennials. I think that's a great point. So you lived through that, you saw that, and just even through a teenage eye, that's a formative experience. That's an interesting point. Thank you for that input. Let's go to Rebecca in California, line 2. Rebecca.
Yes, hello, Laura. So good to speak with you.
Back at you, girl.
I am 25. I have a sibling who is 23, and my sister just turned 20. We're a household of millennials, and I've often told my mother we are old enough to be our grandparents. Ever since I was, very young, I've always been ostracized in a way from my peers because and my mom gets mad at me when I say, the kids in college or the kids in class or the kids on my sports team. But I can't call them men. They act like boys, and the young women my age, they act like girls. The problem, I think, with a lot of my peers is they haven't grown up. They're still children.
The adolescence continues, in other words, Rebecca. They're perpetual adolescence, but the culture encourages that, don't you think?
Well, it's not just the culture. I think it's everything. And, of course, it's always beginning with the parents. It's the parents abandoning their kids completely to school, to the TV, and then when they get to teenage years, all the kids want to do is be with other kids their own age, and it's fostered continually from the TV they watch to the books they read. I've picked up sometimes young adult literature, and it feels like it's written for a third grader.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Rebecca. Don't go away. Stay here. Stay here with me. That is so funny that you mentioned that, because a friend of mine was just proposing to write something for Life Zet on the dumbing down of literature for young adults today, and how it's either filthy dirty, it's filthy, much of it, or you're right, it's written as if it's being read by a sixth grader. Poor narrative, poor plot, no character development, horrible, horrible, horrible. A lot of bad stuff. I completely concur with this conclusion of yours. Now, Rebecca, is your family an immigrant family into the United States?
My mom was, yes.
And where's she from?
And she's from Guatemala.
Oh, my daughter's from Guatemala.
And do you know, her father, he raised her and her brothers praising the Reagan. His hero was Reagan, John Wayne, Gary Cooper, these figures that I myself was raised, and I can't say these names anymore. People look at me and they go, who's that? Who's John Wayne? And I gaped. I think, you don't know the Duke?
A real
The
man,
symbol of
first
American manhood?
Yeah, he was a man.
She came. I don't speak Spanish. I have no culture. I've never been to Guatemala, and I'm completely cut off from that culture. My mom wholly adopted America. She's now a citizen, and to my ear, at least, she speaks perfect English, and she homeschooled us.
Well, now I get. Now the secret sauce becomes obvious. You were homeschooled, and your mother developed a very strong love of this country. That's the way it should be, right, Rebecca? You have just described for us perfectly the immigrant experience as it should be experienced. That's it. You just described it. A work ethic, an understanding of American culture, history, American heroes, proper gender roles, men and women, the love of learning, and the desire to be truly different. Like, a lot of people are being heralded because they dare to be different. And so Caitlyn Jenner is the courage, the epitome of courage today. Okay, that's the way a lot of people feel. So it's Caitlyn, but I think it's courageous to stand athwart the culture as it exists today. I think your stand is what are you, 25?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's courageous to stand against the culture as it exists today. But you can sum up, and then we'll take a break.
I tell people, if they ask, no, I'm not a feminist, I'm feminine. And that goes for my brother too. He's a man, and unfortunately, I don't know if there's any other men out there for me or my sister. I've never been approached in all of my days, but this is courage, that I'm willing to say who I am. I'm not going to cave into this culture. I'm going to be who I am, whether the party or whoever has a problem with that.
Well, your faith is key, and stay in that faith community, and you'll find someone great. And you're obviously extremely smart. And that's the call of the day. That's a great call. You should get on LifeZet, Rebecca. Get on our new website. You're going to love it. Who knows? You might even contribute to it. I don't mean money. I mean content. LifeZet, ZETTE.com. Go on and you can hit the health, faith, family, pop culture, politics. It sounds like it speaks right to you and where you are in your life right now. Great call. We'll take a break. Don't go away.
They don't have to worry that much, so they go, hey, let's have a little part-time job just for giggles. They don't have to worry about people's customer service. They just want the paycheck.
Though they don't want to be tied to a job 60 or 70 hours a week. Whereas some baby boomers, they work hard too, but may be willing to put in those extra hours.
A lot of employers deciding to go with older workers who have a more developed, consistent work ethic. You're listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction. 60% of workers age 18 to 34, that's the millennials, say if their boss prevented them from using a mobile device to take care of personal tasks, they'd quit.
Oh, no.
They would quit. Many millennials have never known a world without mobile devices. Now employers are forced to deal with younger workers who want to be able to text and use social media on the job. That's a problem. I'm telling you, that is an issue.
You mean I can't Instagram?
Especially the way people are losing focus and inability to focus and finish a task before them with a sense of excellence and pride and workmanship. You can't do 5 things at once well. You just can't do it. And many jobs require an acute mind, an especially strong focus, laser beam focus, and you're not focused if you're worried about the next text or the next Instagram or the next Snapchat.
We want people to Facebook it, tweet it, all that.
Instagram it,
the hashtag.
Vine it.